Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. We're going to be talking about two shows about ultra-Orthodox Jewish people that are both on Netflix, which I watched. One is called Shtisel, which was a popular show produced in Israel, aired in Israel. It actually, I've heard it became very popular in like parts of the world that are very conservative. So like Muslim countries in particular are really hooked on this show, Shtisel, which is about ultra-Orthodox Jews, because, you know, it's a nice, clean show. There's no swearing. There's no nudity. It's just very wholesome. And then the other show is Unorthodox, which was a limited series. I think it's four long episodes, like 4-hour-long episodes, something like that, based on a true story, based on a memoir written by the subject, the main lady of the story. And it takes place in Williamsburg, a very, very, very religious Jewish neighborhood community, right? So the main actress in Unorthodox is also, she plays like a teenager in the show Shtisel. The show Shtisel depicts ultra-Orthodox Jews living in Israel, in Jerusalem somewhere, and they're very, it doesn't make fun of them. It's not like there to make them look bad. Now, in Israel, there's a lot of tension, always has been tension between the religious and the secular communities, probably for a large number of reasons. You know, first of all, they live in a lobby system. So you have, like, let's say, ultra-Orthodox people receiving benefits, receiving subsidies, receiving welfare from the government, and as well as the fact they're not enlisting in the army, while their secular relatives, their secular neighbors are being drafted to the army and paying taxes rather than receiving it. So there's like one reason why when we live in a lobby system, when we live in a non-capitalist type of system, you're going to have hatred between different groups of people. So there's no live and let live. It's like someone else being religious and receiving special favors kind of becomes your problem. And there's other causes for tension as well. I imagine, or I think I know, the ultra-Orthodox, they wish to impose their will, their dictates, or their religious beliefs on everyone legally. So I know the reasons I'm listing for the tension is largely making the religious look like the bad guys, and, you know, for good reason, I think. But in any case, the way that the ultra-Orthodox Jews are depicted in the show Shtisel is actually very benevolent. So it kind of showcases problems that they have, like struggles they go through. You have like the man who he got married young, as you know, is normal over there, and immediately start having kids. And then he kind of got tempted and sort of abandoned his family for a little while. This is in like the early part of the first season. He went off to South America to work in some kind of like butchering company. Like, it's his job to ensure that the meat being prepared is kosher. So that's like his job. So he leaves his family for like months at a time. And one of the trips, he just kind of deviated completely, you know, linked up with some beautiful South American woman over there, and kind of ditched the family for a while. So like, there's an example of some of the struggles that you might go through. You're living in this very strict and limited type of environment, and, you know, religion is everywhere. You might deviate. I mean, that's one of the struggles it depicts. The main struggle, I think, the kind of ongoing theme on the show, relates to the main character, who's named Kiva, and Kiva is played by a remarkable actor. Now, like, I've looked up other shows made in Israel, and this actor is just everywhere, and he is just remarkable. So his character, Kiva, he has what Ayn Rand calls the benevolent universe premise. So he is just the most trusting and sweet guy ever. He's an artist. He's a talented painter. And that is not the type of career that is encouraged in the ultra-Orthodox community. And he's living in Israel, which is like, just having a career altogether is not exactly open to people, because by opting out of the military, they're sort of agreeing to never really work. It's a weird situation. It's like, okay, you don't have to come to the army as long as you agree to just be on welfare your whole life. It's absolutely ridiculous. But the lobby system has produced even more bizarre things that we know. This main character, Kiva, he loves painting. That's kind of his passion. He also develops feelings for girls that are not necessarily who his father would want him to date and marry. So like in the first season, he likes a widow. She's twice widowed. So she, quote, killed both of her first husbands, right? Like they both died. And because these people are so mystical, they kind of blame it on the widow. They don't like say it like that, but it's sort of whispered like, oh, no, like her husbands keep dying, marry someone else. They're very superstitious. I mean, that's what religion does to you. When you actually take religion seriously, we get into all these arguments here in like the regular part of the world, where we have like Jordan Peterson explaining why you need like religion or God to tie things together. And Ben Shapiro makes a similar point. But I don't think they're telling you what religion actually ends up looking like. It's deeply mystical and it becomes violent. But you don't really see that in the show Shtisel, largely because the ultra-Orthodox Jews in Israel, with all their problems, including some violence, I mean, they're nothing like, let's say, the Taliban or ISIS, right? So they're comparatively enlightened. So this main character Kiva in the second season, he ends up developing feelings for his first cousin. So yeah, there you go. There's another sort of problem or issue or situation that this show showcases. It doesn't like set out to make the religious people look bad per se, but it just kind of like shows you what they go through. And here's a guy who, he spends his whole life with very limited contact with women, with the opposite sex. From the time he's a child, he's going to all boys schools and he's discouraged from even talking to girls. And, and then he's got this first cousin and she's basically the only girl he really talks to. And then he likes her and chooses to marry her. So it's not the way of life that, that really appeals to all of us. But again, it's like depicted not in a way that's sneering or mean to them. It kind of like makes them look very likable and sincere and earnest. And like, this is their way of life. This is what they know. This is what they believe. And you kind of get a glimpse at kind of what might be wrong with the secular elements of the culture in Israel. So like in the first season, the abandoned lady, the one whose husband ditched the family for a while, she gets a job taking care of a secular lady's son, like babysitting basically. And, and like, so she's a single mom, like her son is always on his electronic gadgets. I mean, I think it's meant to kind of like show you that like the contrast between the two ways of life. So it's a wonderful show, Shtisel, again, it's called, and it is definitely shows you kind of some of the problems that the ultra-Orthodox Jews deal with in Israel, but it's not produced in a way that's meant to make them look bad. It kind of lets you kind of understand and have some compassion and even like some of these characters. The young girl, the teenage girl in the show Shtisel, is also the star of Unorthodox, and the sort of type that she plays, if she's typecast, is she's got the passion, she's got the fury of 1,000 burning suns. You would not want to upset this girl, that I can tell, unless she's just that good of an actress. She has the rage in her, and channels it beautifully to play these roles. So in the show Shtisel, she is she's the daughter of the man who like abandoned the family, and she's enraged by it, and then she's super zealous about religion. She she goes through something that people go through when they embrace any philosophy. So in her case, it's Judaism, sort of insisting that everybody follow the same philosophy, that anyone who's not is doing something wrong, they're dishonest. And, you could go through this when you discover like the philosophy of objectivism as well. And many people do. Like you go through a stage, hopefully just a limited stage, where like you're like enraged that everyone else doesn't get it or that they're not going with it. Like, what's wrong with them? They're so dishonest, right? They're evil. But in reality, there's a time to take a deep breath like I just did now, or to breathe. And, so this young girl in the show, she kind of learns at her own pace that, people are nuanced, people are often mixed, and it's complicated, and even her own parents struggle with conflicts and so on. And she, part of her sort of passion is like she wants to marry she wants to get married right away and start having kids. You know, she's like 16 or something, maybe even younger. It's like crazy. But yeah, it's like very, very dedicated to sort of to spirituality and religion and stuff like that. And she develops feelings for this boy who all he does is study all day. He's is the word flagellating? Like, he doesn't literally whip himself. That's more of a Christian thing, but he's like scolds himself for like wasting time, you know, like I could have spent more time today studying. That's all this guy can think about. He's upset at himself for thinking about girls, like for thinking about, you know, like sex and stuff, which is just obviously distracting him from his studies. So she noticed she's sort of spying on him, this girl, and she then wants to marry him to, you know, because she, you know, she's got feelings for him. And of course she says, I can take your mind off of, you know, I can put your mind at ease so you can focus more on studying. So, you know, it's a very, very interesting, psychologically rich show, and I recommend it. That same girl plays in the show Unorthodox, and that depicts the ultra-Orthodox Jews in a much, much less flattering light. So you definitely see some of the problems they have, but there's no real good guys in the ultra-Orthodox world in the show Unorthodox. They're just, they range, according to the show Unorthodox, the ultra-Orthodox Jews, they kind of range from like clueless to like vindictive, evil, and dishonest. And the main character in the show Unorthodox, Esty, her name is, she escapes from her husband and goes to Europe. She goes to Germany, of all places, which, you know, she's coming from a world where like the bane of everyone's existence is the Holocaust, right? Like it's like this thing in recent history that's still plaguing everybody. And they've attached all these religious connotations to it, all these, you know, very mystical connotations to what had taken place. So then she, of all places, she goes to Berlin, which is where her mother is from. So, or something, or she has citizenship, or she has here's what it is. Because her family had lived in Germany before World War II, she has the right of return. So her mother left her like some documents proving that she may return. She may go become a citizen of Germany if she wishes. So she escapes from Williamsburg in New York and travels to Berlin. And like, it's all new. She's been immersed in this ultra-Orthodox community pretty much her whole life. And, you know, she immediately comes into contact with these very benevolent, adventurous kind of musicians. So people that are studying music, the Philharmonic, whatever, like very, very high grade, high level music students or performers. She meets them. One guy is German, one girl is Israeli, one, you know, like, so she's meeting kind of an Israel, like a Jewess from the other side of the pond, so to speak, in more ways than one, just like a secular Jewess who has just like a completely different attitude to life. And they're all very embracing of this girl, Esty. She's kind of in culture shock through much of the show. And the show Unorthodox definitely depicts the secular way of life. That is the life that most normal people live, that probably you watching are most familiar with. You don't call it secular, you just call it regular life. It depicts modernity as good, and, you know, Orthodox Judaism, certainly ultra-Orthodox, like extreme Judaism and religion, as very constricting and corrupt. Her husband, who goes to Berlin to go find her, and brings along his friend Moshe. Moshe is the villain. Moshe is actually a scumbag any way you look at it, because like when he's traveling, he goes to strip clubs and, you know, hires prostitutes. So he's not even living the religious way of life that he's enforcing on other people. And the way these people operate, according to the show, which is according to the book written by the heroine or the subject, the protagonist, they basically use the law to intimidate people. Like they'll get a lawyer, and the way that things had gone with this girl Esty, she thinks her mother abandoned her, but as she finds out, and again, this is based on a real story, her mother had been raising her back in New York. She had left the religious community, taken her baby with her, and then the ultra-Orthodox gangsters, in essence, they got lawyers to basically get this baby away from from her mother in court, basically using the system. A very very disheartening kind of story. And so those same types of thugs come down to track Esti, the main girl in Unorthodox, to find her and to kind of pressure her to return. And they try to intimidate her, or Moshe, the main kind of bad guy. He intimidates her. He tells her, look, what are you going to do out here? You don't have any money. You don't have any skills. You barely speak any language other than Yiddish. Like, you know, just come back home and, you know, and you'll live with the community where you belong. So he definitely uses fear to motivate her. And yeah, check out the show. I guess I won't tell you how it ends because no reason to spoil it. I think I conveyed the point of what goes on in these two shows. They're both very, very well-produced shows, I think. Unorthodox, a little bit less. You can tell Unorthodox is based on a memoir. Like, they're like hitting all the main points that the author had mentioned, like the different scenes and stuff like that. Whereas Shtisel, I think, is just purely fictional. So it's all about the plot. It's all about character development. There's no real agenda. So Unorthodox is more like propaganda in that way, that there's sort of like the lesson they're teaching you as like the main point. It's still, I think, very well made and worth watching. Shtisel is great. And it's just very rich because, again, like, there's these people living in Israel. So many people see them as lethargic, and I think their way of life is lethargic and unadmirable. But at the same time, it's like it is appropriate to have some compassion for the fact that people who were born into this way of life, breaking out of it is like beyond most of their rationales. It's like, not only have they not, like, they wouldn't know how to begin contemplating that, but like the world outside, the secular side of town, is sort of lacking in spiritual values. And that's kind of where we come in, quote unquote. We, you know, students of Ayn Rand, objectivism, people who appreciate romantic art, romantic realism, egoism as an ethical code, the virtue of independence, you know, like, who are kind of inspired by the image of Howard Rourke in The Fountainhead. Like, there is a secular alternative to religion that has spiritual value, like has spiritual values, and that's just something that the secular culture needs to embrace. So there's really little to no chance that you and me could go convince a bunch of religious people to rethink their religion. It just doesn't happen. We could, you know, one or two people might be able to be lured away, but by and large, if there is any hope, it's going to be in the secular world. And I kind of say the same thing now in the sort of philosophical battle, I guess, the philosophical landscape. I look at the secular atheists, like the sort of the skeptics, I think. People like Sam Harris, who you've heard me mention. You probably are wondering if I have a crush on the guy. I've mentioned him here so many times. I really like what I've learned about him in terms of his calmness and his respect for intellectual process. So if there is any hope for objectivism to reach people, I think it's in the sort of scientific, secular types of people. So applying this to the, you know, the ultra orthodox dynamic and how they relate to the world outside, when, you know, the streets of Williamsburg are filled with romantic art, when the streets of Jerusalem, outside of the religious bubble, so like when the secular people in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv and elsewhere in Israel are embracing romanticism, they're embracing reason, and they're embracing selfishness as a virtue, they're embracing individualism, they're implementing capitalism, that's when you're going to start seeing religious people start to deviate. And it might not be a sort of violent and angry deviance. It could happen slowly, it could happen through generations. And that's really how it's happened historically. You know, the Jews who moved from Europe to America back in like the late 19th century, early 20th century, a lot of them, they were coming from very, 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 very strict religious communities back in Europe. You know, in Eastern Europe, God help you if you try doing anything other be religious. It's all they knew, you know, Jewish people in like Eastern Europe in much of it, or maybe in all of it. Jews in Eastern Europe, there's like nothing but religion. They come to America and the world is benevolent. America is a benevolent place, certainly in the early 20th century, mid 20th century. Capitalism to a large degree is everywhere. Benevolence, a positive sense of life. And it's not that like the immigrants immediately become secular, but their kids, they go to college, or their kids, they, get into the arts. And suddenly you started to see, let's say like a rabbi, like a religious leader, like a very, very religious man who's Jewish. His son is like not wearing a yarmulke. His kids are sort of deviating in sort of their own subtle way, and their grandchildren are like hardly religious at all. And like with each generation, they just kind of assimilate into the culture at large. That's what was happening back in the 20th century. So why does that not happen anymore is an interesting question. It certainly doesn't happen to the same extent. Some would say it's because the religious communities have galvanized. They've really put a lot of focus into tightening their game. That's one way to look at it, but I will offer you that it's because the secular culture has gotten much more nihilistic. The secular culture has gotten much less benevolent, much less romantic. There's much less to allure a religious child growing up today than there was 100 years ago. So you want to change the world, really start with yourself and just make the world a more beautiful place. Be an artist, or commission beautiful art, consume beautiful art, and study and try to propagate, I guess, a good philosophy for living on earth. And, propagate can, be a tricky one, because a lot of people do it in a kind of a annoying way, but, do it in a thoughtful and good way, like I'm doing right now. Marilyn with $2. Thank you for that. Marilyn with $2 more. Whew, it's raining. She says, is this a group that Netanyahu favors? So the right wingers in Israel tend to pander to the religious element. So yeah, someone like Netanyahu and his Likud party, they're the ones who will give the subsidies to the ultra Orthodox. Whereas let's say the more leftist, secular, even socialist, peacenik elements of the political landscape, they're more the type to say, you know what, time to cut these subsidies. Maybe we should be conscripting these, religious fanatics to the army, show them they need to pull their weight around here. That's generally the split. The right wingers tend to, pander to the religious elements. Although the left in Israel, I've heard, is basically there are no peaceniks anymore, from what I've heard, from like what Yaron Brook has described. Like there's no pacifist left anymore. No leftist pacifism in Israel anymore, like there was back when I was a kid growing up there. Like a good chunk of the religious voices were saying, yeah, come on, there can be peace. Yeah, give the land away, everything will be fine. Turn the other cheek. But my understanding is that the violence coming from the Palestinian territories was just so intense that eventually, like sooner or later, in the past 20 years, the peaceniks just kind of gave up. But there probably still is a secular left, like a socialist force within Israel, I would think. But I don't know. I mean, maybe, I guess, from what I picked up, they're kind of all sort of centrists now. Like they're all mixed economy centrists now. So I guess that's better than having socialists there. But look, ultimately, like I said before, the secular elements are where the battle needs to be waged, I think, or that's who needs to change. When the secular people, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in New York, or whether it's anywhere, when secular people, or people who are not religious, are embracing a good philosophy, good times are ahead. But as long as non-religious people are embracing socialism, they're embracing altruism, collectivism of any kind, pacifism, all types of anti-life policy and philosophies, then you're only going to see religious people get more religious. And sadly, they breed faster than anyone. So if it is about a lobby system, at the end of the day, it's the mystics who are going to have the most votes. Jonathan Honig with $1.99. Thank you for that. Allie Beard with $2 says, great discussion. What show you want to do next? Oh, good question. I don't even have one planned. But, this is not, TV talk. We don't necessarily have another show coming up. But I thought maybe today, for this nice solo episode, I could talk about these two shows. All right, coming up today, we've got nothing at all. But tomorrow's daily objective is on the book of the year. So I don't remember if I'm on that or not. I think I am. Wait, am I? I don't remember. You'll find out. It's all going to be a surprise. Emmanuel with 189 says, damn it, I missed this live, lol. Well, at least you got to catch the last minute of it. I was going to just start over again for Emmanuel, but, you know, he sent us $1.99. It's not like he sent $199. Please leave a super thanks on the video, you know, support the network. We got some great content here always. Some of it's for members only. So hit the join button on YouTube or go to the link down below and become a member that way. And yeah, leave a super thanks, you know, support the network. Leave a like. I mean, leaving a like costs you no money. Thank you all for joining us today and have a wonderful new year. And I hope your Christmas was solid. Marilyn with $3 over coming in. I mean, any more super chats, or can we just end this GD show? Allie says, who's that Pokemon but book? Yeah, maybe next episode will be a review of Pokemon. I just need to watch the show first. All right, thank you all for joining us, and goodbye.